Well, there's not going to be any surprise in the announcement today. You know, mayoral campaigns have to go through a lot of struggles. That's just the nature of it. And, you know, Rahm Emanuel, many of you followed when he left President Barack Obama's staff to run for mayor of Chicago. A judge threw him off the ballot on a residency challenge saying he hadn't lived in Chicago long enough. He fought it, an appeal, got it reversed, and got reinstated to the ballot, and as you know, won the election in Chicago in 2011 election in a landslide. In 1973, there was a state senator by the name of Coleman Young who filed for office. He was thrown off the ballot by a Wayne County circuit judge who ruled that a sitting legislator wasn't allowed to run for mayor. He fought it to appeal, and the appeals court in Michigan put him on the ballot, and he went on to a very successful career. Like many others before me, I'm just going to have to deal with one more obstacle. We have a judge who made a ruling that we believe to be legally incorrect, and today we are filing an appeal. And we're confident that we will get this reversed. But this is the nature of the business. If you're not willing to fight through adversity, you have no business running for mayor of Detroit. All right. About fighting through adversity, and there's now 4,500 people who signed up as volunteers in my campaign, and we are just going to keep going. And in light of the things we've seen from Kevin Orr in the last week, the stakes are so high that we get somebody elected mayor who's got a strong record of financial management. If we don't, this city could be under an emergency manager for years to come, and I'm going to try my best to make sure that doesn't happen. As far as the exact sequence of how this happened, it's still, the outcome is still amazing to me. There was no confusion about this. We knew from day one that the filing deadline was May 14th of 2013. We knew the charter said I had to be a registered voter a year ahead of that. I was a registered voter on April 16th of 2012. The lawyers went over all the filings, walked over to me with the clerk's office. Very professional staff at the elections division of the clerk's office sat down and went through all the paperwork with me. And I asked the employee, as I sat there going over the petitions, I said, I want to make sure we don't have a timing issue on my voter registration. And she showed me on the computer that I was registered April 16, 2012, and said I was fine. They filled out the forms and gave it to me as being properly filed. Had anybody said to me, you know, you can't file until 1 year from when you registered, you need to come back on April 16, 2013, I would have taken the forms home and come back 2 weeks later and filed them. It would have been the easiest fix in the world. But of course, the clerk staff read the charter the way our lawyers read the charter, the way every election lawyer who's looked at this has read it, which is under election law, deadlines for filing and references to filing mean the date by which you can file. And so if you think about the absurdity of this ruling, I am the first candidate in history who has been removed from the ballot for filing too early. They're saying I should have taken the petitions home and come back and refiled them 2 weeks later. So this will be in the hands of the Court of Appeals shortly. Our campaign is going to continue on. I was going to cancel some things, but people have been calling, complaining, saying nobody wants to cancel anything. So I will be out at noon at a senior citizen center today, and we're going to continue to campaign. I do anticipate the Court of Appeals will act within a week because the clerk is under pressure to print the ballots. And I want to make one last point, and then I'll take your questions. There has been some really disturbing rhetoric that's come out from one of the opponents. There is no room in this campaign for the language of hate and divisiveness that we have been hearing. If you don't think I'm qualified to be mayor, vote for somebody else. If you think it's more important where you lived versus what did you do, vote for somebody else. But A big part of why I'm running is to put the politics of racial divisiveness behind us in the city and run on a campaign of unity. And I can tell you, from the 4,500 volunteers, from the 160 house parties now I've done in every corner of the city, I have been welcomed with warmth and kindness in every neighborhood in the city. I drive from place to place by myself in a car. I've never had anything except positive reaction. What the broader community is seeing on TV does not reflect the average person in Detroit. The great majority of people in the city have been very positive and welcoming. And if the voters get a chance to decide that, people will understand just how narrow is the support for that kind of approach. And with that, I'll take whatever questions.
Is there a cutoff time that you've been told in this appeal process that it has to be decided whether the Court of Appeals or state Supreme Court for the ballots to get printed? Have you been given a cutoff?
No, I mean, I used to practice election law. At one time I was the county's election lawyer back in the 80s, and you have to deal with a number of deadlines. On June 22nd, absentee ballots are supposed to start to go out, which means they need some time before that to print. And the clerk's office could tell you better than I could, but certainly they would like to have a ruling early next week. There have been times in this state where ballot printing has been delayed by court action, but we would hope that there would be a prompt ruling here and that would not be necessary.
But as you know, it could go beyond the Court of Appeals to the state Supreme Court, and that's a further delay.
And so if you go through the last several election cycles, this happens every cycle. And you saw in the last one, you had a number of ballot issues, you remember, got challenged and then got put back on by the Supreme Court. The appellate courts are very experienced at dealing with these issues on a timely basis. I don't expect timing to be the problem.
Just one more question. Would you call this, as an attorney that you are, is this a close call?
No. No.
Why?
I mean, you've seen people like Jocelyn Benson, the dean of the Wayne State Law School, call their argument nonsense. I mean, there hasn't been an objective election law attorney look at this who says this makes any sense. Under election law, and the charter is drawn from the state election code, filing means filing deadline. You're trying to establish a time you live in the city. The deadline was May 14th. I was a registered voter 13 months before. We hit the intent of the charter. To have anything else is a moving target that becomes an absurdity. And I think that's what the appellate court will.
Mr. Duggan, it says here in the charter that it's 1 year at the time of filing for office.
Right.
At the time of filing. It doesn't say at the deadline for the filing of petitions. I mean, it doesn't give that May 4th, it doesn't allude to that. It's pretty clear here. It says time of filing for office.
And we will let the lawyers deal with it. If you look at the commentary in the charter, it was intended to make sure that you had resided in this city a year before you had to file. It indicates it's derived from the state law where filing clearly says filing deadline.
It doesn't say deadline.
But if you read that, it says you have to, go ahead and read the language again.
It says here, a person seeking elective office must be a citizen of the United States, a resident, and a qualified and registered voter of the city of Detroit for 1 year at the time of filing for office.
For 1 year. So think about this. We got people who have been residents of the city for 20 years. Are they ineligible? Okay, the law, the charter language is very badly drafted. If you read it literally, the only person who's been a resident for exactly 1 year is me. Okay? It doesn't say more than 1 year. It doesn't say less than 1 year. Okay? The charter language is very badly drafted, which is why the City of Detroit the City of Detroit Law Department, which Crystal Crittenden ran, came in and said emphatically at the Elections Commission and again yesterday in court that the only reasonable interpretation of this, if you read it literally, it means only somebody who's lived here exactly 1 year can be on the ballot. Reading it literally makes no sense. You have to look at what the intent was, and you've seen people like Freeman Hendricks, the chair of the Charter Commission, say there's no question the intent was a year from the deadline. But in election law, filing has always meant filing deadline. I'd encourage you to speak to the dean of the Wayne State Law School, Jocelyn Benson, who has done a lot of election law. But the Court of Appeals will deal with it.
What do you think of Judge Popke's ruling?
You know, you don't like to see a a judge who's written a 22-page written opinion before she even heard the oral argument. That's not normally the way you would like a case of this magnitude to be decided. But that's behind us, and the appeals court will do what they do.
Are you worried at all that this might kind of hurt the trajectory of your campaign with, you know, with other contenders raising questions about whether you were eligible to even run?
And as you look at things like they raised it on Rahm Emanuel in 2011, they raised it on Coleman Young in 1973. Is it an obstacle to overcome? Yeah, but I got a lot bigger obstacles than that.
Are you confident you're going to get an emergency appeal? In other words, will you
As a matter of routine, the Court of Appeals expedites these things. So I would be shocked if the Court of Appeals did not rule by next week.
There was a bit of a victory dance last night. Some things said in the paper offering you to go back to Livonia, ticker tape parades and that kind of thing. I know you talked a little bit about that, but did you find it particularly egregious in terms of its tone?
You know, what concerns me is people in this broader region see that, and they think that reflects an attitude of Detroiters. And of course, the reason Tom Barrow's trying to knock me off the ballot is if the voters get a chance to decide, it's not going to be close, because the vast majority of people in the city do not share those sentiments. But I have been working in this city every day for the last 32 years. I am embraced by Detroiters, as a Detroiter, in every neighborhood that I go to. And I am staying in the city for the long run no matter what. I'm a part of the city, and the great majority of Detroiters accept me as Detroiters. And I'm pretty sure if they get a chance to vote between me and Mr. Barrow, Detroiters will express their own opinion. I spent 3 hours with the lawyers last night, and they believe there is very little likelihood that this will not get reversed. So we're totally focused on the court case.
Okay, and in terms of timing, if timing doesn't come in sufficient and ballots are printed and things proceed.
Yeah, again, if you look at the cycle, the courts absolutely know how to handle election time deadlines. They do it every year, so they'll be fine. I mean, the courts will do what they have to do. They'll either rule on time or they will tell the clerk to delay the printing. They do that as a matter of routine in each cycle.
Just for clarification, have you already filed the appeal, or are you planning to file it today?
It's supposed to be filed this morning, but the lawyers are in another building, so I don't know whether it's actually been filed, but if it hasn't been, it'll be filed shortly.
How many lawyers did you have working on it?
We've got now Butch Hollowell, Tom Broach, and now John Pirich from Huntingman joined the team yesterday afternoon, so I guess we got 3.
What kind of resources is this taking from your campaign?
Well, it hasn't taken any resources from the campaign. The lawyers have been handling it. So we've been just running our campaign, and obviously it distracted us yesterday afternoon.
Are you having to pay campaign funds to these lawyers?
Yeah. Right.
What's the tab so far?
Yeah, I don't know what the bill is, but I don't know a lot of lawyers that work for free. If you know, let me know.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you all very much. Should be studying.